I'm Jocelyn Bioh, writer of Schoolgirls or the African Mean Girls play, and you're watching Consider It Black Lit.
Welcome to this episode of Consider It Blacklit. I am Kim, your host, and for those of you tuning in for the first time, Consider It Blacklit highlights films, television programs, and stage plays that feature African Americans both up front and behind the scenes. We also discuss social issues as it relates to some of these programs and how they may or may not impact our communities. So thank you for tuning in, and we hope you continue to tune in each week. Today, it is my pleasure to highlight an off-Broadway play called Schoolgirls or the African Mean Girls. The production tells a coming-of-age story set in an all-girls boarding school in Ghana in the 1980s. It explores themes of beauty, colorism, and female adolescence. And it is my pleasure to have the playwright here today, Jocelyn Bioh. Welcome, Jocelyn.
Hi, thank you.
So, Jocelyn, tell our audience how you became a playwright.
It's a funny story, actually. I'm an actor as well. I still act off Broadway and in television. But when I went to college at Ohio State University, I was majoring in theater. And I discovered that the theater program cast to type, which means that they would only cast roles that they believed Black or white people to play. And that really limited the roles that I could get because the school was a predominantly white school. And so to compensate for the credits that I wasn't receiving from acting, I decided to take a playwriting class. And my professor just thought I had a really good ear for dialogue and that I was really great with characters and plot, and that it's something I should continue to pursue. And so I decided to apply to graduate school as a playwright. I got into Columbia's MFA program, and I've been writing plays ever since.
And you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
So tell our audience about the storyline and how you came up with the idea for Schoolgirls.
Yeah, so Schoolgirls is set in the 1980s in Ebri Girls Boarding School in Ghana, which is actually the boarding school that my mother attended.
Oh, wow. So it is a real boarding school.
It is a real boarding school, yes. My mother went there. She is a proud Ebri schoolgirl. And I also went to boarding school myself, except here in America. So we both shared that, commonality and, understanding of what it's like to be in a school with all girls and, the, fun, crazy, and sometimes, traumatic experiences of being in that. Anyway, so this play is set in the 80s and centers around a crew of girls, namely Paulina, who's the queen bee of her crew. And the girls are all super excited because a recruiter for the Miss Ghana pageant is coming to the school. And everyone knows that Paulina is a shoo-in, except that a new girl transfers into the school and comedy and drama ensue.
And it does. So how long has this play been in production, and has it always been at this particular theater?
It has always been at this theater here in New York.
And it's the MCC Theater, right?
MCC Theater, yes. They are the first people who came to me and said, we really love the play, we want to produce it. And I was thrilled because it was going to be my world premiere debut as professional playwriting debut as a playwright.
Oh, wow. How did they find out about the play?
The artistic producer of MCC Theater, her name is Jessica Chase. She's now become a very good friend of mine. But at the time, I did not know her, and she came to see a reading of the play in its early iteration and brought the play to MCC. We did a reading there. And then I think maybe 2 days later, they gave me a call and said, we want to do it.
Wow.
And so then we had about a year to plan. I rewrote it, developed it. I wound up rewriting it 27 times by the time we finally got to the final product.
Wow.
So it was a real deep dive into unpacking and learning exactly who all of these characters were. We did it last fall at MCC, and it ended up doing really well.
Yeah.
And then come this past spring, we had award season in the theater community, and the show ended up doing really well there as well and won quite a few awards. And then we took the same production this past fall to LA, to the Center Theater Group. We did the play there, and it ended up, we had a great time there for 5 weeks. And now we're back home on our home turf for the third and probably final production,
I hope it's
at
not
least
the
of this production.
Of this production.
Of this play. Yeah, the play is now published and has been licensed and will be performed in 5 other regional theaters, including Canada, in the next year. So schoolgirls will be all over the United States.
Oh, congratulations.
I'm really excited. Thank you.
Because I know when I had posted on social media that I went, it was amazing. A lot of people were like, oh, I saw that. That was really good. So, it's really, getting around. So I'm glad that it's spreading around to regional theaters so everybody can experience it.
It's important to me. I mean, it's a play featuring 8 Black women, and it was a play that I thought would never get produced because of that. 8, a cast of 8 is pretty large in what theaters, consider. And so I just thought the odds were really against me. And so I was just really grateful that MCC pulled the trigger and said, listen, we support you, we get you, and we want to be part of your playwriting journey. And they've been incredibly supportive.
That's good.
And I think it's been a really great relationship for both of us.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Let me ask you this. How do you think your play is different from some of the other plays on or off Broadway in New York City?
Well, I write African comedy. I come from parents who are Ghanaian, and I've always been very passionate about putting African people on stage. I also have a comedic voice, and I've always had that voice. So I just, conflate the two together and let it do its thing. So I think in that way, I feel like American theater is really used to seeing an African narrative in one singular way, which is usually a story of war-torn or poverty or, war, rape, AIDS, any of these things, that myriad of kind of sad stories that are very true of the continent. And that's the thing, is they're no less valid. But what I think I'm doing that's different is adding levity to how the diaspora is being reflected. And that's important to me. So I don't know that you're going to see a lot of that in other theater. Just theater. I wouldn't even say even just within the Black community. I think in general, I hope that what I'm doing is different and hopefully inspiring for other people to come along and, share comedic stories of their cultures as well.
Mm-hmm. I noticed when I went, it was mostly Caucasians there.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think African Americans or people of color don't come to the theater in volumes that, non people of color do?
Well, it's categorically we've been kind of pushed out of the theater community. Mm-hmm. It's always been, historically theater has been for the elite and the wealthy, and just systematically we're not a part of that. We don't have generational wealth in the same way that I think white people do, specifically in this country and especially in New York.
And theater has become very expensive.
It's a very expensive thing. You can buy a movie ticket now. They're a little pricey, but generally you can go see a movie for under $20, whereas a theater ticket usually starts at $50. And
that's nosebleed seats.
Yeah, and those are usually not the best seats or whatever. So I think Black audiences feel very alienated. And they've never been catered to. MCC is, I'm one of the first Black playwrights that they've produced in nearly 19 years.
Wow.
And, they recognized that there was a whole community of people that they were not catering to who are desperate to go see themselves on stage. And they recognized that they needed to make a really big shift and get with the times. Mm-hmm. And so I worked very closely with them in terms of audience development and creating discount codes and encouraging audiences to come during previews, things that make it a little more affordable for them to come see theater and for them to know that a theater all the way downtown in the West Village is producing a play that has 8 Black women in it. A lot of times they don't even know. And so we've worked very closely together to curate audiences that, look more like the people on stage. And it's proved to be pretty successful. Maybe the night you were there, wasn't, but I even...
Yeah, well, I was there on a special night,
yeah,
so
exactly.
yeah.
But even the fact that it has started to reach audiences that don't typically, go to theater downtown or not within their community, feels really exciting for me.
Oh, so as a playwright, what are some specific challenges you have in terms of getting your work? It sounded, I don't want to say relatively easy, but somebody saw your work and invited you. But as a playwright in general, what are some of the challenges that you have?
So many. I mean, I think it's just because theater is so expensive. A lot of theaters, from off-Broadway to not-for-profit to commercial theaters on Broadway, they're very concerned about, rate of return.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
so
true.
they also want somebody to write a hit, and what is considered a hit or successful is very subjective. And so the challenges I think a lot of playwrights face is writing something that feels very true and honest to themselves, but also something that they feel like audiences will come and enjoy and want to invite other friends to come and enjoy too. And that towing that line can be very difficult. I mean, for me, I feel like it's a little easier because I'm like, I know I'm writing, comedic stuff. At least it's funny to me,
Yeah, it was funny. We were laughing.
Yeah, sure. So I feel like I worry about that less. But it was very difficult getting someone to come and see that. I mean, the journey from finishing, school and graduating with my MFA to someone coming to see my play that would then lead to the play being produced was 10 years. So, and it's not a financially lucrative business. And so for people who don't have that, tenacity and wherewithal, you don't want to wait 10 years before you can be able to pay your rent.
It has to be a passion. Yeah, exactly.
So I think all of those things, I mean, I think that's reflective of being an artist in general.
Yeah.
It can be really difficult that way.
Well, those challenges seem to have paid off.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that it received a Drama Desk Award.
We received the Ensemble Award for the Drama Desk Ensemble Award. So the whole cast who was in the original production got an award. And then the play won Best Play at the Lucille Lortel's. The Whole Warrener, which is a dramatist award where playwrights give it to other playwrights, which I was very honored to receive. Now I'm blanking on whatever. But it was a very fun award season. I was wearing lots of fancy dresses, going to a lot of awards. And I mean, and honestly, just that the play was even... that the play was even recognized and nominated in any way was very, very overwhelming. I just felt like I had spent so much time feeling not seen, and specifically by this kind of white theater community, the people who are guarding the castle, are people who are so far from who I'm writing about and mostly for. So to feel affirmed in that way was nice. I didn't need it, to know that I was doing something important, but it was nice,
it feels
to feel
good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the director was Rebecca Teichman.
Yes.
Thank you.
I know it's a hard one. Yeah.
Yeah. And she recently received the Tony Award for Best Direction for the play for Indecent, which was great.
Yes.
Tell us what it was like working with her.
Rebecca she's also someone who's now become an incredible friend. I would say even mentor to me in some ways. And she's a white Jewish woman from Long Island. And didn't, I would say, seem like an obvious choice for a play called Schoolgirls or the African Mean Girls play. But what I really loved about working with her was that she really understood and saw the universality of the story. She recognized even in herself as someone who grew up one of the few Jewish women in her own community and how she was ostracized and alienated in that way. She really understood how the universality of what it's like to be a teenage girl in school. Mm-hmm. And we dug into that, She wasn't apologetic about being a white woman and, directing this. She understood the play and the characters in a visceral way. And, I have to say that the play is what it is because of her. I mean, she really, I told you I wrote the play, rewrote it 27 times. But she was asking me the right questions. She was giving me the right provocations that really, excited me to jump in and, dig through and get to the heart of the story, which is colorism. She was really kind of gently prodding me to be vulnerable and share my own story and my own struggle with colorism and feeling inferior to lighter-skinned women, and what that can do to a community, what that can do to young girls. And she knew that would be the heart and the breaking open of the play. And she was right.
Yeah.
I feel I'm just really honored and excited that she wanted to do this. And, She had just won a Tony Award, so I just thought, oh, great. Well, she's going to pull out. I'm never going to see her again.
And she was right there.
And no, if anything, she doubled down on like, this is, I'm even more excited to bring this story to the forefront. So I love her. She's a great woman.
The actresses were phenomenal. Did you have any input in who they chose to?
I did.
Oh, good.
I did, yes.
They were great.
I was very involved in everything, from costumes to wigs to the set, and yes, down to the cast. The lead actress, Mami Abuafo, who played Paulina. She's actually been with the play since my very first reading. I asked her I knew she was Ghanaian, and we met, and I was like, hey, I'm writing a play, you want to be a part of it? And she's actually one of the sweetest people in the world, so I think she was like, why did you think of me for this, mean role?
Because she was really mean. Yeah. I was like, I don't like her.
I know. But I knew that she would really bring heart and empathy, and because I knew where I was going with the play and with that character, I knew that I needed a really strong actress and who we could feel empathy for. And I feel really lucky that I found that in all of them. They're just incredible. And 3 of the actresses who are in the play now are new to the production. They weren't in it originally last fall. But they all bring such heart and depth to their characters that they really slid in seamlessly. What's great about it now is that coming into it, we knew what we were making. Last year, I was still rewriting it. I was still creating. And this year we came into the rehearsal process knowing exactly what the play was, and we could really dig deep and get to the heart of all of those painful feelings. And yeah, I just feel really lucky. They're incredible women.
Yeah. Now, did the actresses bring anything extra, outside of what you wrote to their characters?
Oh yeah, it's a comedy, so you really need to cast strong, comedic actresses who know how to lift the words off of the page. So. I only hear their voices when I read the play now, so I would be very interested to see what it's like when the play is done regionally. But no, they're all so strong in their own right that they they're part of the DNA of this play, especially because I rewrote it with them in mind and catering to their specific talents. So. Yeah, no, they're part of a fabric of Schoolgirls for sure.
Yeah. Schoolgirls had a very strong message. I mean, there was colorism, but how it ended was very sobering because it basically told you no matter what shade you were back then in the 1980s and still today, you're still a person of color. So you still kind of end up at the bottom end in some arenas.
Yeah. I mean, and that's these are the effects of colonialism. Many African nations, America. This is all part of our, a lot of countries' history. And specifically the play is set in Ghana. But I think because the play is taking place here in America, we see facets of ourselves in these characters and in the story. And I think it's important to, I don't have a solution for racism. I don't have a solution for colorism. But highlighting it and showing it and pointing it out and making an audience feel the same feelings as the characters, making them see facets of themselves in those characters will hopefully then incite them to think differently as they move into the world and when they encounter people who are different from them. Understand the implicit biases that come with being white or close approximation to whiteness as you can be. And I wanted, people to be left with something to think about as they walked out, as opposed to just that was funny, yay. To really have something to ruminate on as they moved through their life and how maybe they've participated in colorism or racism in that way. So hopefully it implicates the audience and then causes them to think.
Yeah, well, you were definitely successful in doing that because I remember even the next day I was like, wow, that just last scene where they were watching the beauty contest on TV, it was like, wow, after all of that, everybody ended up in the same place. Yeah, exactly. That was amazing. Yeah. So you said you like to write comedies. Do you think you will venture into any other genre?
Well, I think even with Schoolgirls, while generally it is a comedic play, when we do get to some really serious moments, and so I think comedy is just a funny way of being serious in a lot of ways. So I think my message will always be that spoonful of sugar, but but it will always have a message in some sort of way. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I will write a dark drama, someday. But my portal, my way in is always comedy.
Okay. Well, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So, how does your family feel about you being in entertainment? Because you mentioned that it took you 10 years to get to this point, and it's not necessarily that lucrative sometimes.
Sure.
So sometimes family are like, oh, why don't you be a doctor or whatever. How did your family feel about you?
Well, I'm sure they would. I'm sure my parents would still love that me to be a doctor. And I'm the youngest in my family, and my brother is a doctor, and my sister's in social work, so like medical adjacent, and I'm the black sheep of the family who's an actor and a writer.
An successful playwright now.
Well, thank you. I think they just want me to be happy and want me to have success. I mean, my parents came to this country only like 10 years after Ghana got their independence. And so I think they had dreams and wants, for their children as well, that are very in line with like all American dreams. So I think they just wanted me to be successful, but they didn't have examples of like other African people who were working in this business who were successful. There was no Lupita, there was no Uzo, there was no Idris Elba when I was younger, and now we have those examples, and so I think they've come around to understand like, oh, this is something that can be both financially lucrative eventually, and also something that can be very meaningful and powerful in the world. So it took them a while, but
they came around.
Yeah, they came around. Yeah.
And speaking of Idris Elba, if you ever have him to play, I want front row.
I
want front row seats. Okay.
I will organize it all. Yeah.
Do you have any other projects coming up that you can tell our audience about to look out for?
Yes. Well, I this last year I was just writing in television. Okay. So I have 2 shows that I wrote on. One show is called Russian Doll that's going to be on Netflix. I think. Okay. At some point in the winter.
Okay.
They don't have a release date yet, but I wrote an episode for that, and I guest starred in the episode that I wrote.
Okay, Russian Dolls. We're gonna look out for that
on Netflix. And then I also wrote on this season, the 2nd season of She's Gotta Have It, Spike Lee's show.
Oh, okay.
And I wrote an episode for that as well. So great. TV stuff is basically what's coming up right now, and I'm working on 3 new plays and a musical. So. Lots of writing. That's
good. I look forward to it. So if somebody wanted to follow you on social media or find out anything about you, how could they contact you or how could they follow you?
They can contact me on Instagram and Twitter. I am at JJBIOH, which is JJ Bioh, my last name. That's my handle on all of my platforms. Make sure it's 2 J's, because if you get 1 J, that's my sister.
That's great. Well, everyone, it has been a pleasure to speak to Jocelyn. Make sure you look out for Russian Dolls.
Yes.
Okay. And make sure you go see Schoolgirls or The African Mean Girls. We'll put the information on the screen for you where you can get tickets and where you can go see it. And until next week, consider yourself blacklit. Thank you. Blacklit highlights films, television programs, and stage plays that feature African Americans both up front and behind the scenes. We also discuss social issues as it relates to some of these programs and how they may or may not impact our communities.
A Small Tree Runs Red is based off of a true story that took place, not story, a true event that took place in Valdosta, Georgia in 1918. It surrounds the life of a young lady named Mary Turner, who was 8 months pregnant. At the time, she was lynched out for speaking against the lynching of her husband.
The blacks that were there, you know, they were in their lane. They knew they didn't want to rock the boat. They wanted everything to kind of be the same because of the fear, you know, because of the fear of lynching during that time and, you know, what have you. So he was a different type of man, you know, which kind of brings it back to the title, Nothing But a Man.
When I wore it straight, I know I felt more palatable to some people, and in some spaces I felt like I can ease and blend in a little bit, but even now, people who really know me, they agree. They're like, I feel like your natural hair like matches you as a human more.
But what I learned about primarily was not as much about Althea specifically as the milieu in which she came up through the ranks before she broke into Major League Tennis, which was the American Tennis Association, was the Black Tennis Association. And what a lot of people probably don't know is it's the first sports organization founded by blacks in America in 1917, and actually this year is the 100th anniversary.
So until next time, consider yourself blacklit. Thank you for joining us. Blacklit highlights films, television programs, and stage plays that feature African Americans both up front and behind the scenes. We also discuss social issues as it relates to some of these programs and how they may or may not impact our communities.
A Small Tree Runs Red is based off of a true story that took place, not story, a true event that took place in Valdosta, Georgia in 1918. It surrounds the life of a young lady named Mary Turner, who was 8 months pregnant. At the time, she was lynched out for speaking against the lynching of her husband.
The blacks that were there, you know, they were in their lane. They knew they didn't want to rock the boat. They wanted everything to kind of be the same because of the fear, you know, because of the fear of lynching during that time and, you know, what have you. So he was a different type of man, you know, which kind of brings it back to the title, Nothing But a Man.
When I wore it straight, I know I felt more palatable to some people, and in some spaces I felt like I can ease and blend in a little bit, but even now, people who really know me, they agree. They're like, I feel like your natural hair like matches you as a human more.